Hi, and welcome to our What Sold video for the 2-week period of December 10th through 23rd. This video is going to cover 2 weeks because we were actually out of town from December 10th through 18th, and even though we were still making sales while we were out of town, our sales were affected by having our store on away mode, and also we waited until we got home, which was after a full week, to enter everything into our spreadsheet and ship everything. And just based on the way I entered it all into my spreadsheet, and because our sales were affected, just lots of factors, I decided to incorporate all of those sales across that 2-week period into a single video. So this is going to be a little bit longer video than normal, but hopefully you guys enjoy it, and let's dive in. But before we do that, if you're new here, my name is Wendy and this is Nina's Jewels. My husband and I buy things at places like garage sales, thrift stores, anywhere we can find things to sell online and flip for a profit. If that's content you're interested in, you're in the right place. Alright, let's dive into what sold for the 2-week period of December 10th through 23rd. The first thing that sold was a discontinued Bath & Body Works lotion. This was in the scent Peach Bellini. We have done really well with discontinued Bath & Body Works items in the past, but this one did take a while to sell, so I may have had it overpriced. But we did get it at a garage sale for $2, and it eventually sold for our full asking price of $24.99. So I was happy with that, even though it took a long time to sell. Next up was one of the pairs of Barbie shoes, the yellow Barbie shoes that we got at the Goodwill bins, and a big bag of yellow Barbie shoes. This was a pair of mules. We paid 61 cents for these, according to my spreadsheet math. I mean, technically by weight we would have only paid a few cents, but it's easier for me when I go to the Goodwill bins to take my final price and then figure out how many listings I get out of that and take the price and divide that by the number of listings, and then that's what I say my cost of goods is. So that worked out to 61 cents, and this sold for $10.99, and that was, I believe, our full asking price. So that's really good on a tiny little pair of Barbie shoes. Next up was a vintage 1990s Carly St. Clair women's ugly Christmas tree sweater. We got this, oh man, so long ago when we were very first deciding to go to garage sales to do reselling. And we found this garage sale where they had all of these Christmas sweaters, and they were like really well kept. They were stored in bags. You could tell they were really well loved. And so we bought a bunch of them. We bought like 6 or 8 Christmas sweaters, and I think there were a lot of factors going into why they didn't sell for us over these years, because we've had them for like 3 years. I think it was because I probably overpriced them. I think it was also because people weren't having Christmas parties like 2 or 3 years ago. And I have slowly lowered the price over the past, few years since they haven't been selling. So I think I've finally reached the price point where people want to buy them, and I think also people are starting to have Christmas parties again. So this year we've actually sold several of these Christmas sweaters, so I'm really pleased about that. This one we purchased for $4, and it sold on best offer for $20. So next up was a Jones New York collection women's Riverside Drive blazer, and it was new with tags. The original retail price on this item was $239. We got this at a garage sale for just $2, and we've had it in our store for quite a while. So I did accept a low offer of $50 on this. Actually, every January we do an inventory of our items, and we make a decision based on how long it's been in the store as to whether or not we're going to put it in a garage sale pile, put it in a donate pile, or just throw it away. Most of the stuff ends up in a garage sale pile because, we wouldn't really have something in our eBay store that is trash. But you never know. I mean, something might have gotten broken in the bin or something. You never know. So we make that decision. And this year we decided we're really going to do a major clean out. We're going to be very, very particular and really get a lot of our old inventory cleaned out. And I know this one would not have made the cut, which is why I accepted such a low offer on this, because I know this one would have ended up in the garage sale pile, and $50 was way better than garage sale price on this item. So next up was a white ceramic Outlander coffee mug. It was new with tags. We found this in the Goodwill bins for 68 cents, and it sold for $19.99. I don't think that one would have made the cut either, so that was a good sale. Next up was an 18 count pack of Dayspring Christmas cards. They were brand new in the package. We found these also in the Goodwill bins for 67 cents, and these sold for $14.99. Next up was a lot of two Transformers preschool vehicles. It included Bumblebee and Chase. We also found these in the Goodwill bins. We paid 94 cents for them, and they sold for $14.99. Next up was a vintage Washington Redskins sweatshirt. It was in really good condition. We got this at an estate sale for $6, and it sold for $24.99, and I think that was our full asking price. Next up was a brand new pair of women's sleep pants by the brand Secret Treasures. They had little hearts all over them. They were really cute. I almost just kept them for myself. We got these out of a storage unit that we purchased that was primarily clothing, and we had broken down our cost per item on this unit at just 24 cents. So these pants sold for $22.99. Next up was another item we got out of that same storage unit. This was an Old South Pancake House t-shirt that had a graphic about German pancakes on it. This is Old South Pancake House is a pancake house in a town that is really close to us, that is really well known. People around here love it, and they are famous for their German pancakes. And their German pancakes are really good, but in my opinion, their Dutch babies are better. So if you ever make it to Old South Pancake House, I recommend the Dutch babies. But this shirt sold for $17.99, and we had paid just 24 cents for that also. Next up was a 2021 Chick-fil-A kids meal toy. This was a book, and it was called Bear's New Friend. It was new in the package. We got this out of the Goodwill bins for $1.18, and it sold for $7 even on best offer. This item also would not have made the cut, probably why I accepted a low offer. I don't remember what the original price was, but definitely that item would have gone to the garage sale pile. Next up was a really good sale. This was a pair of boots by the brand Bertucci. They were Chelsea boots, new with tags. They had red lug soles. They were really cool looking. We found these at Marshall's. We got them when we were doing retail arbitrage. We paid $10 for them, and they sold on offer to buyer for $111.98. Next up was a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle replacement weapon for Donatello. It was a 10-inch bow staff. We found this in a thrift store toy bag, and we paid 22 cents for it, and it sold for $14 even on best offer. Next up was a vintage Aurora Borealis rhinestone silver tone cuff style bracelet. We got this at a garage sale. It was in a big bag of jewelry. I paid only 5 cents for it, and this bracelet sold on best offer for $15.50. Next up was a Sakura Snowmates Debbie Taylor Kerman red ceramic snowman bowl. This was actually mine. It was gifted to me a long time ago. I no longer used it, and I decided to sell it. It sold for $20 even on best offer. Next up was a vintage 1984 Korean Catholic hymnal and Bible. We got this at a thrift store for $2.16, and it sold for $39.99, and I think that was our full asking price. Next up was some kind of electronic game. I have no idea what it did. I comped it at the garage sale, decided it was worth it. It was called an iTop Pro game. Program Your Own Messages by iToys Zeeks. We paid only 50 cents for that at the garage sale, and it sold for $29.99, so I would definitely say that was worth it. Next up was a Gideon's Pocket Bible in the color Baby Blue from 2003. We got this at the thrift store for 35 cents, and it sold for $14.99. Next up was an 8-pack of Beauty Control replacement brush heads for a facial cleaning brush. These were actually mine. I used 2 of the brush heads, but 6 were remaining and unused. I used to have this facial cleaner, and it broke. I loved this one so much. I was so sad when it broke because they don't make them anymore. And I actually got a new one this year, so I decided to sell these unused replacement brush heads. I don't remember how much I paid for them. I've had them for a long time, and I sold them for $10 even, and that was a best offer. Next up was a 2017 Mattel Hot Wheels blue and orange track booster launcher. We got this at the thrift store for $1.08, and it sold for $35 even. We have found that we do really well with Hot Wheels tracks and track sets. So when we see stuff like that, we definitely pick them up. And a good way to sell them, especially if you don't have a complete set, we just part them out or sell them in big bulk lots of random tracks and pieces, and we have made a lot of money doing that. So be on the lookout for stuff like that. Next up was one of the Harry Potter books that we got in many different languages. This one was Philosopher's Stone in Swedish. We paid $5.99 for this at a thrift store, and it sold for $79.99. Next up was a Spirit police officer costume. It did have some staining on it, so we did disclose that in the listing. We paid $2 for that at a garage sale, and randomly it sold for $29.99 at the end of December. Who would have thought? Next up, we sold a complete series DVD of an anime called FLCL. That we got at a garage sale for $3, and it sold on offer to buyer for $18.38. Next up was a really good sale and also a heartbreaking sale. This was a vintage 90s Y2K Jinko jeans men's extra large olive green tribal tiger embroidery hoodie. We got that at a garage sale for $10. I was really excited when I found it because I know how well Jinko jean stuff does. And that sold for $119.98, and that was an offer to buyer. Unfortunately, we have had a return request opened on that. It hasn't come back to us quite yet, but they stated that they thought that this was actually a youth extra large, which it's not. To my knowledge, Jinko jeans did not make any youth clothing, has never made youth clothing. They don't currently make it, and I don't think they ever have. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments below. But also, I did research this item, and all of the other listings and information that I could find about this exact item, they were all men's. I did not see that they ever made this exact design in a youth item, so I think it's just vintage sizing, and vintage sizing does run significantly smaller than modern sizing, so I think that's where the disconnect was. We did have measurements in the listing, but some people, they don't pay attention to that. So we will definitely use this to improve our listing when we get the item back, and include information in the listing that states, please check the measurements because this is vintage sizing, and vintage sizing does run significantly smaller than modern sizing. So that's usually what we do when we get a return, when there's an issue like that. We just relist the item and include more information in it so we don't have this same problem. The buyer was very, very nice, so hopefully it won't result in any negative feedback, but you never know. So anyway, we're just waiting to get that item back, and we will relist it. I don't think we'll have any issues reselling it because it is a very popular item and it had a lot of watchers. Okay, next up was a complete series DVD of the television show The Dukes of Hazzard. That we got at a garage sale for $14, and it sold for $39.98 on offer to buyer. It did sell really fast. Next up was an item that was mine. This was a black velvet faux fur kind of cropped jacket. It was really cute. I just never had occasion to wear it. I always saw it in my closet and I was like, oh, that's cute, but I never just had anywhere to wear it. So I just finally decided to sell it. It fit like an extra small, but it was marked a medium. So I don't know what the deal was with that, but you can see I put that information right in the title, and I have had this for a long time. I have no memory of how much I paid for it or where I got it, and it sold for $21.18. Next up was a vintage 1996 Brighton genuine leather mock crocodile wallet. We found this at the thrift store for $5.41, and it sold for $18 even, really fast. Next up was 3 packages, 30 diskettes total, of Highland brand 3.5-inch double density floppy disks. They were all new. 2 of the packages were sealed and 1 of the packages was open, but all the discs were in there and unused. We found those at the thrift store for $2.16, and they sold for $25.48, and we did get some interesting feedback on this. The person said something like, "Thank you so much, I really needed these for my DeLorean." I didn't know if that was a joke or what was up with that, but I was like, okay, have fun with that, going back in time there. All right, next up was a 1995 Bleachers Cal Ripken Jr. limited edition 23 karat. 23 karat? I wonder if that was a typo on my part. I wonder if it really was 23 karat or if it was supposed to be 24. I don't know. It was a gold card either way, and it was in near mint condition. So that belonged to my husband, and we sold that for $21.99. Next up was a Norman Rockwell book. It was a hardcover book from 1971 in a slipcase. We got this at an estate sale for $4. I do remember comping it at the estate sale, and sometimes when you quick comp stuff, you don't get the best information, and I think that that's what happened here because the information that I saw, I think it was selling for a little bit more, and we ended up only selling this item for $15.98. So I think it was just a bad buy. I didn't comp it well. The information I looked at was not great on my phone, and occasionally that does happen. But anyway, that was not a great sale, but we did manage to make some profit on it. And we got it out the door, so that's, all that matters in the end. Next up was an Urban Outfitters women's crimson fuzzy eyelash sweater. We got this at the recent church rummage sale that we went to. We paid $3.25. This sold fast for $32.99. That was our full asking price. Next up was a Jamie Saddock. This brand makes women's golf wear. And these were purple, long, below-the-knee Bermuda shorts. These came out of a Goodwill blue box that we purchased that was marketed as women's vintage clothing. And there was some decent stuff inside that box, but there was also very obviously non-vintage stuff in there. And it was just kind of some of the stuff I was like, you should be embarrassed, Goodwill. I can't even believe you put this in this box, and this was one of them. But even after I said that, internally inside my own mind, this was the first thing that sold from that box, so, I guess the joke's on me because these sold first. So we had paid $4.20 for each of the items that came out of that box, and these sold for $17. So, still happy with that, even though these technically were not vintage. Next up was I described it as a vintage, handmade, stunning women's medium black velvet embroidered Mexican peasant top. I normally do not use adjectives like nice or pretty or something like that in my title, but this truly, I just felt like the pictures did not do it justice, and it just was not your standard, regular, Mexican peasant top that you would get at, a regular street vendor. It was absolutely gorgeous. Just one of the most beautifully made garments I've ever seen. It was stunning. I mean, it really truly was. And so I wanted to have something in the title that said this is not your average Mexican peasant top. This thing is beautiful. We got this at an estate sale for $6, and it sold for $99.99. And I don't know if we've gotten feedback on this yet, but I'm sure they were. Unless it didn't fit, I'm sure they'll be happy with it because it was gorgeous. Next up was a lot of 10 random Pokemon tins, Pokeballs, trading card albums, just different Pokemon accessories and things that cards came in that we had collected from different places and just lotted them all together and put them together. We got most of these at garage sales. We had paid $2 in total for all of them, and those sold for $19.98, and that was an offer to buyer. Next up was a pair of adult small karate pants by the brand Century. We got these at a garage sale for $2, and those sold for $32 even on best offer. Next up was a pair of Hey Dude fur-lined booties for women. These we got at a garage sale for $5, and they sold for $34.38, and that was an offer to buyer. Next up was a men's pea coat. It was by the brand Analog Design Unlikely Futures. Not a brand I'd ever heard of. I quickly comped it at the sale and actually kind of had a hard time finding it, so I just decided to risk it. So we had paid $3.25 for this at that garage sale, and it sold pretty fast for $39.99, so I'd say that was worth it. Next up was something I did not expect to sell, but this is why I tend to list everything if it's in good condition. This was a lot of 2 Texas A&M dentistry maroon canvas. It was a lanyard, badge holder, and a keychain. And so we had gotten these in a really random bag that we had picked up at the thrift store. It was a bag that had different lanyards in it, it had different ribbons in it. We had gotten that Louis Vuitton gift bag ribbon in it that we sold. We got a couple of Disney Cruise Line lanyards in it and some Disney pens, and these were in there. And I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna list them because this is the kind of stuff that always surprises me, and it sold. So we had paid 21 cents for this, and it sold for $10 even, and that was on best offer. Next up was a Titleist FitJoy adjustable black and white visor. It looked like it had never been worn, but it looked like it had maybe been stored in a garage, so I did list it in used condition. We got that at a garage sale for $1, and it sold for $13.48, and that was an offer to buyer. Next up was a lot of 13 vintage rolls of gift wrapping ribbon. There were some that were called Magic Bow, and they seemed really cool, and I think I put that in the title. Yeah, I did. Magic Bow in the title because I thought somebody might be looking for those. We got those at a garage sale for $2, and they sold for $28.49. Next up was a Lego Dimensions Xbox One game. It was the game only with the manual. We tested it and it worked. We got this at a garage sale for $1. So when I said game only, it actually included the case, but this game also goes with a portal that you plug into the Xbox, and then there's Legos that you build on top of it, and we didn't have any of that. We have had that in the past, and if you have that entire set, that will sell for maybe around $75 if I'm remembering correctly. But we've also sold this game by itself. Now this is our second time selling it, and this always sells. So both of those are items to be on the lookout for. So for this game we paid $1, and it sold for $18.04. Next up was something that we found in the other business that we own. This was just, random office supplies that we didn't use anymore. These were Pro Art lettering stencil sets. The package was opened, but the items had never been used. So these sold for $10 and went to Hawaii, but we still managed to make profit on them. So that's good. And we got them out of the store because these would definitely have been garage sale items. Next up was a vintage pair of women's Salvatore Ferragamo maroon leather loafers. We got these at a garage sale for $1, and they sold for $55. Next up was a vintage Y2K Polo Jeans Company embroidered baseball cap. We found this at the Goodwill bins for $1.18, and this sold for $35, and that was on Poshmark. Next up was a pair of Sony white on-the-ear earpad corded headband headphones. We tested them and they worked. We got these at a garage sale where we got there kind of late, and they said, take these kitchen trash bags and fill them up for $10. And we ended up getting some really good stuff at that sale, so that worked out really well for us. These we did not make tons of profit on, but we only paid 33 cents for them when we did the fill a bag deal. So for that price, there's profit in anything. So these sold for $11.39. Next up was a vintage Neiman Marcus Fitz and Floyd collaboration jungle coffee mug. We got this from a thrift store. This was actually in the video where I went to the thrift store on the day that I bought the car. So if you guys haven't seen that video, I'll link it in the description box below. I paid 54 cents for it. Let me actually back up for a second. I did not buy a car at a thrift store, but I bought a car on the day I went to that thrift store. So anyway, you can watch the video to see. But I paid 54 cents for this coffee mug, and it sold for $15.18, and that was on offer to buyer. Next up was a Medline heart rate watch pedometer activity tracker. It was new open box. We got this gifted to us to sell by a family member. We had no cost, and it sold for $14.24, and we have actually sold this item before. It came back to us because the first buyer said that they just had, even though it had directions with it, that they just had a difficult time understanding how to use it. So they sent it back to us, and even though we had paid the shipping the first time, we were able to still make a profit on it the second time, so hopefully this time the buyer likes it and it stays gone. If not, it's going to the garage sale pile. So next up was a set of OEM Toyota Tundra floor mats. We got these at that rummage sale. We paid $8 for them and they sold for $100 even. Next up was a Forever 21 men's, and that brand is called 21 Men. This was a black terry cloth pullover sweatshirt that said the word yes on the front. We got this at the Goodwill bins for 61 cents and it sold for $18.99. Next up was a Lauren by Ralph Lauren women's extra large ivory cable knit sweater. We got this at a thrift store, like literally the first time we ever went thrifting for reselling, when we had no idea what we were doing or how much was right to spend, and we spent way too much on this. We paid $10.38, and this item sat in our store, I don't know, for maybe 4 years. So when we got an offer on it for $20, I definitely took it, even though I knew we would be like technically losing money on it, because otherwise it would have gone to the garage sale pile and we would have made less. We would have recouped less of that $10 back on it. So this way definitely worked out better for us. Next up was the brand was called Gen 2, and this was a youth extra large TCU Horned Frogs hoodie. This was actually my son's, and he is an adult now, and this doesn't fit him. So this was gifted to him also by grandparents, so we had no cost, and this sold for $15 even on best offer. Next up was a vintage mid-century modern Russian tea glass with silver plated frame. This belonged to my husband. He doesn't know where he got it, and this sold for $10 even. We were just glad to get rid of this because this has also been in our store forever. This was destined for the garage sale pile. Next up was another item destined for the garage sale pile. This was called the Incredible Book of Useless Information. This was an item that we paid 50 cents for, and we got this because there was a big box of paperback books at a garage sale that had a lot of sets of books in it that we wanted, and I just made an offer on that entire box and we ended up purchasing it, and we've made tons of money on that box, but this book was in there, so I would never have just bought this book separately, and I didn't even want this book. It was just part of that bulk purchase. But you know, I always decide to list everything because you never know what's going to sell, but this just didn't sell. It took forever to sell. And so when somebody actually wanted it and offered $6 on it, I was like, you know, we're not going to lose money on it, so I'm going to take it because otherwise it was going to the garage sale pile. So that's what happened with that, but that is not something I would recommend picking up. That was just something we accidentally had. Okay, next up was a good sale. This was a 1983 Knight Rider game. It was complete in the box. We got this at a garage sale for $3 and it sold for offer to buyer of $32.18. Next up was a vintage 1970s Fisher-Price Little People Engineer from the Circus Train set. We got this at that church rummage sale. We paid $1 for it and it sold for $8.78. Next up was a Sony PlayStation game called Killer is Dead. We had the disc only. You can see in the picture that it was a non-original case. We got that at a garage sale for $3 and it sold for $20 even. Sony PlayStation games always sell for us. They're always a pickup if we find them, but they are hard to find. Next up was a Ralph Lauren men's extra extra large custom fit hot pink button-up shirt. We got this at a garage sale for $2 and it sold for $26.59. Next up was a Microsoft Flight Simulator PC game. We got that at a garage sale for $1 and it sold for $11.98 on offer to buyer. Next up was something that belonged to my husband. It was actually handed down to him and he had other stuff from this family member and we just decided to sell this item. So this was a vintage aluminum food mill canning strainer colander with a tripod stand, and we had no cost obviously, and it sold for $37.99. Next up was an Audio Technica microphone impedance matching transformer. We got that at a thrift store. It was in a bag of different audio visual equipment. This was the least valuable item in that bag, and some of the stuff in that bag was much more valuable. So this was the first item to sell, but that bag is going to make us a lot of money, I think. So we had broken down our cost on this item at $2.52, and it sold for $10. Last up, I will go over all of the collectible cards that sold from my husband's personal collection. This week, or this 2-week period, we sold 3 cards for a total dollar amount of $6.32. So that wraps up all of the sales from December 10th through 23rd. Now let's go over the totals. Over this 2-week period, we sold 63 items for an average sale price of $27.80. Our sales totaled $1,751.29 for a net profit of $931.20. And that wraps up this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please let me and YouTube know by hitting the like button. And if you're not already subscribed, please make sure you hit that subscribe button. It really helps out our channel and lets YouTube know that this is content that they should push out to other people. Make sure you also hit that notification bell because you don't want to miss any of our future videos, including one that's coming up that we will cover how much we earned in all of 2023, what our most popular sales categories were, what our most popular sourcing locations were, and lots of statistical information like that that you might find interesting. Thanks again for joining, and we will catch you guys on the flip side.